we have the
Oh,
wherewithal.
okay.
Okay, good. Good. It sounds like the comptroller is getting on based on, or Mike could be talking to his insurance agent. I don't know,
No,
but
Mike, excuse me, Annabon, that was because we have so many people online, Peter's having trouble getting online. So I apologize for that, for walking away. Stacy just called me. But I did want, if I may, I wanted to add something to the issue about jobs, okay, because that's a good point. We can add more. But as you know, because I sent you this information, we got it recently from the Maryland Department of Labor, and we want to talk about it. It's the jobs in manufacturing that are currently available with the current small number of manufacturers, according to the Maryland Workforce Exchange, which is run by there were 9,400 and some jobs posted in October in manufacturing. Now, these are all jobs. These are every position imaginable statewide. So that's significant, that we have so many job openings in manufacturing, which is an issue that we need to start attending to. This is not a training issue. This is a matchmaking issue.
Right.
We have lots of newly unemployed people out there that may not have a company to go back to work on. And so therefore, helping them learn about these jobs would be important to them, obviously, but also to the state.
that's a very good point, Mike. So, that's what I was going to point out, which is, we've sort of done it to ourselves. And one of the things we have not done is we have not created a manufacturing workforce of the future, but neither has, I think, almost any other state, right? There is this rampant shortage of skilled craftspeople around the country. And this is broader than manufacturing. You see it in construction and logistics. You see it, as for instance, in trucking, that we just do not have enough mechanics and welders, and we don't have enough carpenters and machinists and so on. So a good welder in this country can make low six figures. And the typical manufacturing worker, and I'm talking about not a worker at a manufacturing plant, because that includes bookkeepers and secretaries and salespeople and so on and so forth. If you just look at the manufacturing worker, the one who's actually working with productive equipment, they make really quite large sums of money. By some indicators in Maryland, $80,000 per manufacturing job. Again, if you look at overall manufacturing employment, you'll see a figure of average wages probably closer to 50 to 60,000. But that's because that includes a lot of workers who aren't actually in the process of manufacturing. They're in some sense they're overhead. But in any case, so what is the solution here? We have to focus, of course, on our business climate. We have to make it more appealing for global players to invest in manufacturing. That speaks to the corporate income tax, for instance, but it might speak to some other things like the personal income tax, zoning of land. And the most productive thing I think we can do is train the manufacturing workforce of the future. And here's the thing, Mike, that should be something that unites people politically. Obviously, there's a big political divide in this country and in this state. We know that. But it seems to me that whether you're left of center or right of center, the notion of empowering capitalism by training people to work in great jobs, that should be a source of agreement. So, and we talked about that during our webinars earlier this year, that's what the game should be here. We should work to train the manufacturing workforce of the future. Unfortunately, a lot of young people don't realize that these opportunities exist. And so one of the first things to do is also on the demand side is to try to make people more aware of these kinds of opportunities.
Well, and I do know that there are a lot of people that are trying to do that. But let me just say, and my position, it's not just about young people. We have so many, as you know, not what's Maryland unemployment's like 8 or 9% right now. I know it's
7.8%,
but it's still like almost double what it was. We have adults out there. We have adults out there who have mortgages. They need a job, and we need to reach out to them and help them to see that there's opportunities. We know from everybody on this call that's been involved in manufacturing, they know that we have an image problem. People still think we're back in the days of Bethlehem Steel, and we're not. I mean, it's such a high-tech, advanced industry, but that's part of the challenge. That's part of the challenge, Annabon, But I just got an email from the controller's assistant saying that she wasn't able to connect and that the controller was running late, but he should be getting on pretty soon. So Stacy, I hope we can get him on.
Yeah, Mike, there was a comment made in the chat, from Scott saying, when competing on East Coast, South Carolina was also difficult to beat on price. It was always more competitive region on price. Right, and that's right. So one of the things I think we've done in Maryland is we've made ourselves artificially expensive. And then again, that again gets back to taxes and regulation and some other aspects of the business climate. But it will be more difficult to compete with a southern state purely on cost. But look, we know that this is happening, Mike. We know that a lot of global CEOs are reshoring significant fractions of their supply chain back to North America, including the United States. And they're not doing it because our workers are cheaper. They're not doing it because our land is cheaper or our taxes are lower necessarily. China beats us on cost. Mexico beats us on cost. And yet, we've seen the South Carolina manufacturing miracle. We've seen the Texas manufacturing miracle. And so there's a value-added proposition here. And as I say, we've got that port. We've got proximity to New York. You can produce something in China cheaply, but then not ship it to New York. It's a lot easier for us to do those kinds of things. So I think we can compete. And then there's other issues like protection of intellectual property and the rule of law and having a multi-party system and these kinds of things. So anyway, I think we can make this happen. And the fact that we haven't is really quite astonishing.
And I obviously, those are all strong points. And another point that people often don't think about, and I like to stress, there's this whole concept of co-locating research with manufacturing, that there's clear evidence that research is strengthened when you have manufacturing co-located near research centers. Maryland clearly is at the top of the list when it comes to research and development. I mean, we always are very proud of the fact that that our public and private sector universities and facilities are high on research. Growing manufacturing in Maryland would help strengthen research and the argument to put more money into R&D. I mean, so much of research does in fact go into a produced product. And now that we're, this whole issue of the manufacturing of vaccines is a good example of what I'm talking about. But in a sense, what we invent in Maryland, we should be making in Maryland. We shouldn't be letting the manufacturing of that research go out to California. That could be part of that strategy. I've got a message that the controller was signing on. Stacy, can you see if
He's here. He's here.
Okay.
Hi,
Well,
Mike.
Peter, hi.
I'm a little late.
Well,
And I missed Dr. Basu, my favorite economist. So
yeah. Well, just to summarize, Anibon's point, along with Mike Galeazzo's, is that there's lots of reasons why we should be embracing the concept of growing Maryland manufacturing, that growing the jobs and growing the industries. It used to be a nice thing to do. And Peter, I hope you can help support the notion that is something that we must do now. That in light of the changes in our state's economy, an investment in manufacturing is really a smart investment in the future of Maryland's economy. So with that, now that I primed the pump,
yeah, thank you.
here's our controller. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Mike, and thank you for all your advocacy over the years, frankly, for Maryland manufacturing. And, as comptroller, I can assure you that I will be supportive of anything that you guys are pushing in the legislature. I have a different perspective right now, which is I'm interested in survival. And we're going into something that is going to be very, very traumatic for the state of Maryland, which is an out of control virus that has devastating physical impacts, many of them not completely understood. The CDC yesterday put out a private warning to all the health officers in the states to urge everybody over 65 to not go into a drugstore, not go into a grocery store. I'm over 65 and I've been once a week sneaking up to Whole Foods and trying to get there when senior hour is and do my shopping. I'm not going to do it anymore. Not until we have the vaccine. And so God bless the future of manufacturing in Maryland. I'm a huge champion, particularly for the smaller manufacturing startups. I'm completely in as far as adjusting the state's tax policies, fiscal policies, economic policies to promote Maryland manufacturing. One of my favorite sectors, of course, is Kevin Attucks, the Maryland craft alcohol sector, which is many, many billions of dollars and is just a fraction of what it could be once we get back to normal. All of those breweries and wineries and distilleries are little manufacturing companies. But as far as the bigger goal that Mike has spent his life promoting, I'm just the comptroller, but if you can fit me into a constructive strategy or use the bully pulpit at the Board of Public Works, I'm happy to be made available. Everyone has my cell phone. It's 301. If you want to write it down, 332-1961. That's 301-332-1961. That's my personal cell phone. If I'm ever lucky enough to be your governor, I'm going to keep the same number, and you'll always be able to text me or voicemail me. Or if you have Dr. Pursuit called, I'll actually answer the phone. Honestly, yeah.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
but Mike, I don't mean to be evasive. I do want to say that
Well-
I'm urging right now. Well, I'm sorry. Do you want to say something, Mike?
Yeah, and you know me, I like to get brass tacks. And I don't think I appreciate, I think everybody in this call appreciates the sentiment about the COVID. But let's talk about as a result of COVID, Maryland's lost business. Many of them may not come back. And our proposition is we need to build manufacturing to make up for that loss. So you tell us, is that something that you think we should be advocating?
Yeah, well,
We
let
had
me just
250
state.
people on this call,
Yeah,
Peter,
no, I love
because
the
they
50 people.
believe that Maryland's future economy needs manufacturing.
Well, I completely agree with that, and I'm perfectly willing as governor to follow through on that with specific tax and fiscal policies that will make that and incentivize that growth of Maryland manufacturing. I'm just telling you right now, I'm focused completely on survival of people, thousands of people that are going to be affected by this virus because of the fact that we just haven't dealt with it properly. And tens of thousands of small businesses that have already closed permanently, and tens of thousands waiting, hanging on by a thread. So yes, I'm happy to get together with you guys in April and May when the vaccine begins to be distributed and we see some light at the end of the tunnel that it's not an oncoming locomotive. But until then, I'm focused on survival. I'm going to announce next week an effort to put $2 billion of state spending into supporting small businesses, manufacturing included, in Maryland until the federal relief plan is sorted out and is made available. Without a second federal relief plan, this is not being recorded, is it? Yeah,
It is being recorded. Yes.
Okay, well then I won't use the profanity. We're going to be up the creek without a paddle.
Right.
And this is serious stuff. As far as no second stimulus, we're going to see a state budget that is severely impacted. That's number one. Number two, even with a stimulus, which they're working on, I guess, we need to have the state step up to the task of putting its actions, financial, fiscal action, into some agreement with its rhetoric. Its rhetoric is wildly pro-small business. All of us politicians get up and pontificate all the time about how the backbone of the state's economy are small businesses, including your sector. Yeah, but then we don't do anything. So I'm suggesting we take $1 billion from the 1.2 billion rainy day fund. We take the 585.6 million that was in the positive fund balance on June 30th. Not an indicator of economic activity, not surplus from great management. It's just a one-time only chunk of money. 1 billion from the rainy day fund, 585 million from the positive fund balance, and we go to the markets in March, or we agree to go to the markets today in March, asking for an extra $1 billion in debt for the state. And we use that statement that we're going to go and get $1 billion of extra debt, where we have plenty of debt capacity to do that because we're a wealthy state. We use that to free up PAYGO money that currently is being used for capital projects in the state. And we use that to support small businesses. And also, I would suggest there's a tremendous amount of suffering going on among our citizens right now. Just a half a block up the street, I've got hundreds of people lined up at a food line for the local Tacoma co-op. I mean, really, and they've been standing there for hours. So I will conclude just by saying, I think everybody knows, but I think they need to be reminded. We have a very odd recession going on right now. From the middle up to the top of the economy, people are doing just fine. They're a little stir crazy, but they're getting paid. In fact, some of them are really benefiting from the pandemic. But the experts that worked for me, like Dr. Basu, who does not work for me, but experts like him, say there's a tremendous amount of money in these people's savings accounts and checking accounts because they have nothing to spend it on. They can't travel. They can't go out and eat in a restaurant comfortably. So half of the population is doing fabulously, frankly. I know there's a lot of fear about the virus, and I'm not trying to diminish that or say they're not suffering from the virus. But the other half, and this is the first time our experts have ever seen this, it's like a schizophrenic recession. The bottom half, the service industry, the service sectors are just devastated. People are unemployed, people are not getting money, et cetera, et cetera. So I happen to think that in addition to spending the money to prop up small businesses, we need to spend half of it or more on just providing immediate relief to people that are starving, that are about to be evicted, that have no job, whose unemployment has expired. And we have to realize that I assume everybody sitting around here has got a home to live in and is making some money or has resources to live off of. Half the people in the state don't. And we need to do something. After we've done that, Mike, I'm happy to come back and lay out a detailed, eye-watering position paper on how we're going to promote and put back Maryland manufacturing. But I'm just letting you know what I'm focused on as comptroller, because it's a crisis of biblical proportions. Thank you.
Peter, and we understand that. I think part of our message is we can help with what you just said. According to the Department of Labor, in October, there were over 9,000 jobs advertised in Maryland manufacturing, job openings. So let's put those unemployed people to work. We're with you. We can do it now. We want to help with that now. So we're with you. We understand that pain. And so anyway, we should probably get to somebody. We have so many questions.
Yeah, let's have some questions. And if there, let's see who from my staff is here. Is it Alexis who's on the line? Alex?
She was having trouble with her connection.
Well, let me just give my cell phone then, because if people don't get to ask a question or whatever, at least they've got it. 301-332-1961. Feel free after this call to do it. And I'd love to hear from Dr. Basu what he thinks.
Yeah, well, let me just say what we're going to do is we'll copy all these questions and get them to you and to Anibon afterwards as well. So that's part of recording. But Anibon, did you want to respond to what you just heard?
No, I understand, the comptroller is concerned about, the budget to come and, the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic is as pervasive as it's ever been in this country right now. We're months away from broad-based vaccinations. And so, we have to hunker down and prepare for the next few months that are going to be very challenging here in Maryland and elsewhere. And by the way, we have that 7.8% unemployment rate already. And if anything, it's likely to go higher during the winter months. But, here's the thing. Short-term survival is important, and so is long-term survival. And we've got a lot of people here in this state who are facing—
You can't have one without the other.
Fair point. But, after December 31st, A lot of these eviction moratoria go away. Now, they could be extended, we'll see. But the point is, a lot of people are going to be facing evictions. A lot of people are going to be unemployed. A lot of people are going to be very vulnerable economically. And so, in some sense, Mike, what we've got to do is we've got to make lemonade out of lemons. So these people are in flux in their lives, right? They're not anchored. They're not tethered to any secure place. You know, they're blowing in the wind. And what we're saying here today is that manufacturing offers
That's
a
right.
leg up, right? And now it is, historically speaking, I have to tell you, Mike, and to everybody on this call, it has proven difficult for Americans to transition from one occupation to the next. You don't become a restaurant worker, you don't go from being a restaurant worker to a nurse overnight. And you don't go from being a displaced hotel clerk to being a machinist overnight. You know, you've got to invest in these people. You've got to create pathways for them. You've got to make them aware of the opportunities. And unfortunately, a lot of our people apparently are not aware of these opportunities, because even though Maryland's manufacturing sector is not particularly large by national standards, as you point out, we still have a lot of unfilled job openings. And people have been saying in the chat about, well, low cost wins, low cost wins. I agree, but if low cost always wins, and in fact, I don't agree, in fact, because low cost always wins, why do I see so many Mercedes-Benz out there made by German workers? They're pretty expensive. Every once in a while, I bump into somebody wearing a Rolex watch, pretty expensive. It's made in Switzerland. The Swiss worker is not a cheap worker. They're pretty expensive, especially those specialty watchmakers. And so, and they're chocolate makers and so on and so forth. So how do you, if you're a more expensive environment, and Maryland is more expensive than much of the world, how do you make it value added, skilled workers, strong infrastructure, great business climate? We can do this. We just haven't. But we can do this, and we need to do this because there are too many people in our society, including many folks in Baltimore City, Somerset County, Allegheny County, so on and so forth, who are not making it, and we can't have that in our state. Because if we want to say that our state is the greatest place on the planet, it's got to be pleasant for everyone, the land of pleasant living. And right now, it's a very unpleasant place for a lot of folks along at least economic dimensions.
Excellent. Good talk. And I agree with all of that. Mike, I'm not dismissing your desire to have a discussion about the 9,000 jobs. I have 1.1 million Marylanders who are recently filing new unemployment claims. So
Right.
thank you. 9,000 jobs is terrific. And I think Anabar suggests that the workforce training is woefully inadequate right now. But there's something else going on in Maryland right now that, frankly, I'm tremendously concerned about. And once again, I see Senator West is on the phone. Maybe he wants to say a word, or Kevin Addicks. Those are two people that I have a lot of confidence in.
Chris West. Let's hear from Senator West. Chris?
Really, I wasn't prepared to talk. I'm fascinated in what Anirban has to say, as I always am. And I totally support Peter's emphasis in the short term on alleviating suffering of Marylanders. But the whole purpose of this is that in the long term, the state will be much benefited if we can revitalize and grow the manufacturing sector, which I'm totally supportive of.
Kevin Addicks, is he out there? He went to get a cold beer. Okay. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Well,
I'm sorry if I'm not too specific about your agenda, but if there are people that have questions, I'll try to answer them. Alex is not on the line. I'm without a staff person.
Yeah, I'm trying to get at questions that are more of a policy level.
Go ahead, whatever you want.
We had actually, we got so many. Stacy, are you looking at any of these? Want to select?
Yeah, I can send one.
First one from Jim Fielder. Somebody said Jim had a question. Jim's on the line. Jim, I'm not sure if you're still on the line. What are the restrictions to prevent the BPW from creating a preference for Maryland manufactured goods and services?
Yes, those are significant constitutional impediments and barriers called the Commerce Clause. And we have to be careful. Having said that, I'm a huge fan of buying local and doing what other states have been able to do in a gentle way. Biased, there are billions of dollars of contracts that are let towards state located businesses. It's a very delicate balancing act. You can't come out and, other than in a, well, if you want to be litigated to death, you can come out and say, we're gonna favor Maryland businesses. You just
and what
you gotta be more subtle, I think, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mr. Comptroller, I would add to that, in economic development, we went through that a number
good,
of
Jim.
times, even with incentives. But what I'm thinking of in terms of during the period of the declaration of emergency, in order to jumpstart some manufacturing with the monies you were talking about putting into the economy, what about doing it that way in terms of use for PPEs and so forth?
yeah, I think that may have some merit. We got almost $20 billion pumped into the state
Right,
shortly after the first stimulus. And most of that came from the Paycheck Protection Program, which went right to businesses. So there's an enormous amount of money that's floating around right now. And as far as the new dollars being used in some kind of reconstruction of the economy, endorsing Maryland manufacturing, I think that's probably better to wait until we get stable. Once we're stable, we're going to have a lot of money left over, frankly, from all of this stuff. At least I hope so. And I am a huge fan of using the tax policy of the state and using the Board of Public Works. I don't have a problem intellectually or policy-wise with challenging the Constitution and saying, and the court, and saying, no, this is our top priority. And so I'm someone who, if I'm given a little bit of wiggle room, will direct state purchases, county purchases, municipal purchases to favor Maryland businesses or try to recruit new businesses, as Jim was saying. I just think I'd love to be able to promote something specific, but it's so volatile and so chaotic right now as far as the near-time future. I'm not talking the vaccine. I think that is a medical solution that will solve some of this. I just don't feel comfortable that it's going to accomplish a distribution pattern adequate enough until the late summer or fall. But I will say, if there are 5 different vaccines, I'm happy to get one of each.
that's good, yeah.
Jim, thank you for all your great advocacy. The Board of Public Works is continuing to function because our state budget has been completely stabilized by the first stimulus. As I mentioned, the Paycheck Protection Plan went through businesses. So they did withholding from their folks that were getting this literally free money. And so our income withholding, to our great amazement, stayed stable. But right now, Mike, the reason I'm so over-caffeinated here, the reason I'm so concerned right now is that for the last quarter, there hasn't been any real paycheck protection program. It all got expended or frankly is expiring. If that isn't done again soon rather than later, and that's why I'm proposing a bridge, because I think it's so critical and urgent. But if it's not done, we are going to see a budget that will be $3-4 billion less than the budget we're currently in right now. And Senator West and his colleagues will have just an apocalyptic situation as far as public county budgets, state budget, and municipal budgets. And it will be even worse dealing with the 30,000 plus small businesses that will be permanently shut because of the state being right there with them rhetorically, but never quite stepped up to the and said, this is what we're going to do. And remember, guys, that Amazon, we promised $8.7 billion in infrastructure investments to attract our Amazon to the state of Maryland. We lost that bake-off. So all I'm suggesting is $2 billion for about 150,000 still surviving small businesses. How about it? And I offer that, Mike, as a short-term focus for the 55 people on the call. I want to thank each of you for representing you know, the genius of the private sector and capitalism, free enterprise. It's unbelievable how people in the service industry have somehow managed to get around, you know, twist themselves into sustaining and getting through barely, but they need our help. And Mike, go ahead. I'll get back to
Yeah,
you. with my question.
Peter, I agree with you. I don't want you to feel that I'm being insensitive to what you're talking.
I'm not. I'm just letting you know what I'm focused on.
But I want to be clear. Remember, I'm from Dundalk. I remember when Bethlehem Steel had 30,000 people. I watched devastation of human lives before because of lost jobs. If there's any industry in Maryland that understands that the good times can turn into bad times real quick, it's manufacturing. All I'm trying to say, and it's not my agenda, Peter, I think it's the people's agenda, what I'm advocating. I'm just suggesting, and I know many of these faces that I'm looking at, these are people who run industries that are viable, that aren't going under, that have job openings, and we want to help those people. And I
Okay, let's get to them
We
and let
just
me
wanna
hear from some of them.
And
Mike, I agree with you.
we're in agreement with the bigger picture, but we're here to help.
Okay, could we hear from some of them?
Yes.
Because I appreciate that. And those that can't get through, I would love to talk to afterwards because, yeah, I'm interested in what kind of federal or state relief they've gotten. I'm interested in what they think we should be doing immediately because winter is here.
Mhm.
And I'm not suggesting that we not talk about the future. I'm just saying that we have to understand that without relief, we're going to be in a world of hurt. And you guys have influence over that. You all have contacts with Governor Hogan. I have a very positive relationship with him, but he's protecting the public budgets right now, to my consternation. And, you know, it's a rational argument he has, which is, Peter, no, I don't want to give that money to small businesses. I want to keep it in case we need it next year. Okay, I understand that. I just disagree with it. We need to spend it right now and save what we can and stop the bleeding. So let's, if we could, if there's some other people that you want to have ask questions or speak, let me hear from them.
Well, there's a lot of different ones I can add. Let's see.
Just go ahead and
Yeah, I'll just put, there's
pick out a few.
Michael Royce, excuse me. A lot of them are people asking you to contact them, so hold on.
well, that's fine.
But-
Yeah.
But
Mike,
you know,
check the chat. I sent you individually, I sent you questions that haven't been answered yet. Check your messages from me.
I'm getting, I think we just sent over the questions. Just pick one, Stacy. Don't pick,
yeah.
pick
Yeah,
a high
Stacy.
level one, a high level one. That's Stacy Smith. She's with RMI.
Yeah, I'm appointing her MC right now. So go ahead, Stacy.
I'm not so sure if they're all high level, but here's one from Libby Trossel, Carroll Community College. At least in our county, we have a difficult time getting unemployed workers into training to prepare for new jobs like manufacturing jobs due to the enhanced unemployment and or childcare issues related to the pandemic. What incentive or assistance can we can we give them to get people back to work? And I think somebody else also mentioned transportation in their region. So if there's any thoughts there.
Yeah, this is
Anabar,
interesting.
Anabar, why don't you just jump in? Because
Yeah, sure. Well, as it turns out, Carroll County is one of our most manufacturing intensive jurisdictions. A lot of mid-sized manufacturers in Carroll County. And so, you know, the community college there has been a partner with the private sector for a long time. I think that's one of the closest public-private relationships I've seen in our state. So yeah, it is challenging. And you know, some of the other folks that commenting on the chat pointed out that when they hire workers for good manufacturing jobs, $15, $20, $25 an hour with full benefits, they find a lot of turnover in those positions because people, for instance, don't show up to work, or at least don't show up to work on a consistent basis, those kinds of things. So this is a real problem. I tell you, there's a structural issue here, Mike, which is that, and this is going to sound offensive to some people, I think, that the consequences of losing a job sometimes are not as harsh as they should be. In other words, if I can lose a job and then go right on to unemployment insurance, then, the penalty for not showing up to work is less than it otherwise would be. I'm not arguing that we shouldn't have unemployment insurance. I'm not even arguing that we shouldn't have generous benefits, but there is that perverse disincentive to really be reliable at work when you've got so many alternatives to work. And that's, so in any case, there are a lot of people out there, that said, who are really committed to their careers, want to do work with dignity, want to be productive, want to be part of a team that has a common mission. And a lot of those folks have not opted to enter the manufacturing trades. So there's all kinds of dynamics here, and we need to attract more of the best and the brightest Marylanders and the most committed, ambitious Marylanders into manufacturing. And then I think we'll have more people entering programs at Carroll Community College or other 2-year or 4-year institutions, and we'll have more stickiness of the workforce in those jobs. So again, I'm not trying to sound too harsh, and I'm certainly not trying to sound like some kind of right-wing Republican here. But what I am trying to suggest is that a lot of employers have said to me, we hire these people, and then they turn out not to be devoted or dedicated to their job. And that seems to be a problem in many parts of the country.
Well, that's very interesting. And I think Anibar is right on with focusing on workforce training, but I have a little different perspective. And if I ever get to be governor, I'm going to implement a complete reconstruction of the K-12 public education curriculum. I think we're producing kids out of high school that are completely clueless
I agree.
about anything. Half of them don't even think you have to repay a student loan if you go to college. So there's a huge problem, I think, in taking folks that are oriented towards manufacturing and oriented towards more, a life of dignity and independence using their hands and in manufacturing. Asking those folks to sit in an academic environment like community colleges, much as I support the community colleges, I think is not really an adequate exit ramp into a manufacturing job. So I'm much more inclined to paying or incentivizing through tax forgiveness manufacturing companies to do their own training.
Yes.
Do their own training. Bring someone on. Make them feel as if they're, not sitting in a classroom, not having done very well at school, perhaps themselves, or certainly not being suited for it. I guess it's okay, some of these workforce training things where you actually have plumbers and electricians and diesel mechanics being taught. I guess there's something there, but it's still, they don't have a living wage. They don't have health care. They don't have a pension. They don't have a job that's bigger than they are. They don't have a company they can work for because they're not trained and they haven't received the proper coaching as they advance. So I kind of like the idea of having you guys be the new workforce training and the state being a partner, financial partner, economically incentivizing you to do that. Obviously, it can be in close connection to the community colleges. I'm not saying we abandoned their workforce training. I'm just saying, for people to be happy and independent and show up at work on time, they have to feel like they're part of a bigger thing than just themselves. And when they're sitting in a classroom all by themselves, not really following the teacher, or in some place where if they do a course, they might get a job afterwards. That's a lot to ask of people that are relatively disconnected right now from the real economy. And so I'm suggesting that if we do something that doesn't cost a lot of money with the K through 12 education, we could produce high school graduates that know something about sales, know something about the stock market, know something about showing up on time for work. All the things I learned in basic training. I never learned them anywhere. I learned it in the Army. But, people would benefit more from that. And I think some of this, are we getting quality employees that can do the job? You wouldn't have the 9,000 vacancies that Mike referred to.
Yeah.
So
Peter,
anyway,
Peter,
good question, Stacy. You got
Peter,
any more?
Yeah, Peter, I got one from one of my board members, and thank you for that last comment too. I think there's a lot of merit in looking at new ways of training people to work in manufacturing. In fact, Senator West, who was on earlier, is working with RMI on some legislation to deal with, what Maryland needs to do in terms of new training. Doug Hamilton is a board member of RMI, is with Hamilton Associates. He said, Maryland is a high cost, high tax state that includes estate tax. Family companies have little incentive to incorporate or start in Maryland because in an asset heavy industry like manufacturing, it's hard to keep the business in local family hands. If they sell, the first thing a PE buyer is going to do is get out of the state. So I'm not so sure that's a question as much as a statement.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And we, under the O'Malley administration, we had a absolute, mass exit of millionaires from the state because of the constant refrain about raising taxes. And it included the so-called famous death tax that had not been decoupled at that point from the federal. Now it's decoupled. We're still out of sync, but I can report that under Governor Hogan, there's the exodus has slowed greatly of rich people leaving the state. Anecdotally, there are still some. I know some, you know some. Somebody's always moving to Florida to escape Maryland's taxes. But it is, I can just tell you from a data standpoint, it is significantly slowed. I am particularly concerned with not the rich people because they tend to have their own justifications and resources that give them that kind of mobility. And we are a high tax state generally, or viewed as that. I think it's a perception problem more than anything, I think. But what I'm concerned about are the middle class retirees who are moving out of the state. Many of them have taxpayer funded public pensions. And, they're entitled to go anywhere they want. It's a free country. But would I be in favor of removing state taxes from their income? Yeah, because we want them. They're policemen, firemen, teachers. We want them to stay in our state. And they're leaving. There's a significant uptick in exodus of middle-class retirees. And I'm not exactly sure what the formula is, and I haven't seen the latest fiscal notes on things, but something for that group is urgently called for because it's a tragedy for them. And if we give them the least bit of reason to stay here, they will, because their families and their kids tend to be here. Okay, thank you. Anabar, you want to say something on that?
Oh, I agree 100% with everything you've said, Comptroller, on that one. I mean, I don't know why we make Maryland such a tough place to retire in. And I'm going to say something, Mike, that you might view as somewhat biased or prejudiced, but I'm going to say it nonetheless because I want to be earnest, and I know this is being taped. I like wealthy old people. I do. I like them a lot. They pay their taxes, they take care of their property, they participate on not-for-profit boards, they support their local retailers. You can outrun them if there's a dispute. There's all kinds of reasons to want to hold on to them. But I can, when I go to Naples, Florida, I meet so many Marylanders who have relocated, to, Naples or whatever, Daytona Beach, whatever it happens to be. Now, with respect to the middle class, absolutely. I just have too many conversations with folks about why they want to leave Maryland as soon as they are retired. And a lot of that has to do with tax policy, but also, housing affordability and so on and so forth. We need to deal with these issues, and we need to have a stronger state economy. And again, I know we're focused on manufacturing, but the stronger is our local market, the better it is, as it turns out, for local, manufacturers, especially manufacturers of chocolate and clothing and so on and so forth, as well as the distributors and retailers that they serve. So in any case, I'm with the comptroller 100% on that.
Yeah, and I'll just say for your listeners, Anabar, thank you. I associate myself with almost your perspective. It's always been spot on. But the reason we're in this situation is because my party, the Democratic Party, often defines our success by going to our voters. We vastly outnumber Republicans in the state. We go to them and say, look, we've really been successful for you with our budget decisions because we're spending more of your money on pick a program, education, transportation, healthcare. And they define the party's success by how much money, taxpayer money that they're spending. And I'm suggesting to the party that we would be much more successful even than we are in Maryland if we simply went to people and said, hey, we're not going to use that anymore. We're going to ask you to judge whether we're successful as Democrats on the results, on what is actually produced, not by how much of your money we're spending. And so I spent 20 years in the legislature, and frankly, we would always get up and crow about how many hundreds of millions of dollars we've added to the budget for something that sounded good. It's contagious, and we keep adding stuff. And that's why we end up with a relatively bloated budget that requires high taxes in order to be stable. And anyway, I just offer that as a historic note when people say, gee, why is everybody so, why is Maryland perceived as a high tax state? It's because we've added things like, it's like an overloaded Christmas tree. We put so many ornaments on it, and we need to make adjustments there. And I think people are ready for that. I think my party is ready for it. Half of my party votes for Governor Hogan anyway, because I think they like that sense of moderation as far as fiscal and economic policies. Thank you.
Peter, as you were talking, I was reminded about 6 or 7 years ago, you came to an RMI meeting and you talked about this same thing, this like kind of like bottom up approach, and it really resonated then. I think it resonates now. So that's a wonderful message. I have one more question from a manufacturer I'd like to ask you before. It's from Susie Gans from Lion Brothers, and Susie is also on our board.
Yes.
It's a long question. From a priority and policy perspective, one might expect under the Biden administration that there will be a shift from defense expenditure to health, education, and welfare, and an increase in the minimum wage. There are also opportunities as companies look to greater regionalization in manufacturing, particularly as a result of the pandemic, advanced manufacturing. We know, we know there is a real issue in pandemic, but what happens in the next stage to support manufacturing business growth in Maryland?
Well, that's a great question. And I'm happy to literally come back in a couple of months, because we are doing a lot of research with you, Mike, and others as to what exactly that would entail as far as a rebuild the economy for manufacturing in Maryland in a bigger and better and bolder way. I am all in on that. I'm just, maybe I'll defer to Anibar if he thinks something, Anibron, he thinks there's something we should be focused on sooner rather than later. Joe Biden is when people look at me and say, well, Peter, you're just an old politician. You've been around forever. Sometimes the Democrats say to me, gee, don't we need new, younger people? I say, actually, what you need are people who are experienced, who are on the right side of these issues, and like Joe Biden, are going to try to do the best thing for working families and middle-class families. And, I don't want to get into politics, but I feel like a guy who's been tied down to a railroad track and a big locomotive was coming right towards me, and somehow somebody came and rescued me, cut the ropes, and I was able to get up off the track. The locomotive went wishing by, and I just said, boy, that was a close call. And I think Biden, I can't guarantee it, but I think Biden is going to get us back to some kind of normalcy as far as the federal, national commitment to jobs, manufacturing, less chaos, less personal insults, and more responsible leadership. You can disagree. I'm not asking all you Republicans to vote for Joe Biden. That election's already been held. But I am suggesting that there's an opportunity here for the country to get its feet back underneath it. And boy, I think the sky's the limit if he's able to, do that over the next 4 to 6 months. Audubon, do you think? I don't know. Yeah, we're getting into partisan politics here, so be careful.
Well, that's right. But no, I'm not going to get into partisan politics. And I wish you best of luck in your run to be governor of the state. I view it as the greatest job in the world, much better than president of the United States, as this is the greatest community in the world. And so, but, with respect to Susie's question, and obviously she, as people know her, is a brilliant, brilliant thinker, as well as a successful manufacturer. But I think the outlook, Mike, for manufacturing is very bright going forward. And I'll tell you why. Next year, as tough as 2020 has been, 2021 is going to be a brilliant year for the economy. Not initially, not during the initial winter months, but once we get some post-inauguration stimulus, we're probably going to get an infrastructure package from the federal government at long last. We're going to get a vaccine from Pfizer, Moderna, and I hope Novavax, a Maryland player as well, and AstraZeneca, so on and so forth. I hope that vaccine is manufactured in Maryland. And in fact, there is some plans to have some of these vaccines manufactured in Maryland already. And by the way, who has been the #1 source of information globally during this pandemic? It's been Johns Hopkins. They're from Maryland. So we've got some juice here. Now, Peter mentioned also early in the conversation that there's a fair amount of savings that are trapped on household balance sheets. Once we get a vaccine and people can really engage the economy fully, this economy is going to take off, not just nationally, but globally. That creates all kinds of opportunities for manufacturers. Then on top of that, we've got some opportunities in wind turbine manufacturing, as we want to be a leader in offshore wind, for instance. And there's already talk about that at Trade Point Atlantic, for instance. So there's lots of potential juice here. So I'm very much looking forward to 2021. And if we play this right, we can have that Maryland manufacturing miracle. It's not just a fantasy. The amazing thing is that it hasn't happened already.
Yep.
Dr. Basu, I'm not endorsing you, but I'm not running for re-election to comptroller. There's going to be a nice vacancy there. Think about it.
As I understand it, there's a vacancy for governor. As I understand, there's a vacancy for governor too. So maybe.
Well, don't run for that, for crying out loud. But thank you for your comments. I'm generally in agreement.
Right. Thanks.
We're sort of at the ending hour. Audubon, first of all, I want to thank you for joining RMI and bringing these webinars on new directions for Maryland manufacturing. We're going to be doing more. Thank you so much. And Peter Franchot, I want you to know that your honesty and your sensitivity and your humanity is very much appreciated. And I personally believe that it's so consistent with our desire to move Maryland forward by growing a stronger manufacturing base. So I want to personally thank you for taking the time out today. You obviously have a full plate. There's so much you're dealing with, but together we're going to make that miracle happen, Audubon. I think so.
That's right.
Peter, do you have anything else to say? Any last thing?
No, just I'm delighted to see people like Jim Fiedler and Senator West and others on the call, and all of the folks that are there. Please associate me with Dr. Basu's optimism, because I agree, that's right. I just right now am handling some balls up in the air that are quite, not completely stabilized. So a long-winded way of saying thank you for letting me swing by. If anybody has things they need covered by us, happy to deal with it. And Dr. Basu, thank you for being a great goalpost for the state of Maryland.
Thank you. It's very nice to see you, Mr. Comptroller.
All right. Thank you all very much. Have a nice holiday. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.